Hello, my name is Ariel, like the mermaid, and in this video I'm going to talk about cissexism, transphobia, and cisnormativity. Cissexism is a system of prejudice and discrimination that asserts there are two binary genders, male and female, and that these genders always correspond with a person's biology, in particular their genitals. Examples of cissexism include statements that equate gender to assigned gender, like suggesting that only women get pregnant or that only men have penises, and the suggestion that transgender people are mentally ill, etc. Now, cissexism is very much related to transphobia, but transphobia is particularly the fear and dislike of transgender people, whereas cissexism is more the notion of cisgender being more normal, or cisgender being superior to transgender identities. For example, someone with a cissexist attitude who isn't exactly transphobic because they aren't actually, don't have a dislike of transgender people and don't have a fear of transgender people, could be someone who just makes the assumption that gender is always binary, or that gender, that assigned gender and gender identity are always the same. Someone who makes like assumptions like that, or kind of makes statements that really equate like being a man to having a penis, or being a woman to having a vagina, that could be someone who's cissexist but might not actually really have a fear or any sort of malicious attitudes towards transgender people. Cisnormativity is also very much related to cissexism, but cisnormativity is specifically the belief that being cisgender is the only normal and natural gender identity for a person to have, and that being transgender is inherently unnatural and not normal. Now, cissexism is even more hard to avoid than heterosexism, because in our culture there's very much ingrained the idea that there's only two genders, and that it's very simple, whether you're a boy or a girl, it's just, you're born with a penis, then you're a boy, you're born with a vagina, you're a girl. So it's very hard to avoid statements that equate gender to what a person's biology is, and you'll see it. I mean, if you actually pay attention to cissexist statements, it's nearly impossible to avoid. But it's something to be mindful of, because obviously not everybody's cisgender. A lot of people don't have gender identities that fall perfectly into the binary, and even if they do have a gender identity that is, binary, they might not have the same, they might not have a gender identity that is the gender identity you might typically assume based on their biology. Cissexism and cisnormativity can very much contribute to transgender people feeling like they aren't normal, like they can't fit in, they can't ever be accepted as a part of society, and can't ever really be a functioning part of society. So, and it can very much, like some of the small things that a lot of people take for granted who aren't transgender, because, and that whenever someone makes assumptions, cisnormative assumptions, it doesn't really affect them. They don't necessarily realize how something small, like even just like two bathrooms that say, men's room and women's room, some people who don't have that perspective can't possibly know how something that may seem insignificant is actually a huge issue for a lot of people.